President Yoon in Vietnam. He's set to hold a summit with his Vietnamese counterpart for the next 3 decades of expanded partnership in the economy and beyond. The president is also out promoting Korean industries himself. South Korea will start to see the seasonal monsoon rain this Sunday, with the government inspecting necessary preparations. After 4 days of searching, debris from missing Titan submersible has been found, with all 5 passengers presumed to be dead in an implosion. Good afternoon. President Yoon is visiting Vietnam, accompanied by his biggest ever business delegation. On his second day in the country today, the president is set to hold a summit with his Vietnamese counterpart for the next 3 decades of expanded partnership in the economy and beyond. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
The air is thick in Hanoi, not just with humidity, but with anticipation, as President Yoon Suk-yeol's 3-day trip draws great media attention here in Vietnam. This is the leader's first state visit to a country in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Yoon hit the ground running when he landed Thursday, setting out to strengthen bilateral ties which were elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership just half a year ago. Noting that Vietnam hosts the largest number of South Korean nationals among ASEAN countries, Yoon spoke to 300 Korean residents in Hanoi, emphasizing their role in bridging South Korea-Vietnam ties, which were formally established in 1992.
자유평화 번영의 인도 태평양을 가꾸어 나가는 데 있어 베트남은 우리 대한민국의 핵심 협력국입니다. 지난해 수교 30주년을 맞기까지 양국 관계는 눈부신 발전을 거듭해 왔습니다.
Over 3 decades, bilateral trades increased 175-fold, with Vietnam being South Korea's 3rd largest trading partner, according to the presidential office. Korea is the largest foreign investor in Vietnam, which is home to manufacturing plants of Samsung, LG and Hyundai Motor. The president is also travelling with his largest ever business delegation of 205 corporate leaders, including the heads of Samsung, LG, SK, Hyundai and Lotte, with 4 economic events on Yoon's schedule.
This visit is also meaningful as around 10 agreements and MOUs will be signed to give institutional support to enable even more vibrant economic activities between the 2 sides.
But looking beyond economic relations, the president said his visit will be the starting point for the next 30 years of bilateral relations. Yoon and Vietnamese President Vo Van Thuong will have a summit on Friday, with the two not only expected to deepen business ties, but also broaden the scope of their partnership. Ahead of his trip, the South Korean leader told Vietnamese media that Seoul hopes to collaborate particularly in the fields of core mineral supply chains, energy, digital transformation, smart cities and climate action. He also pushed for cooperation in defense technology and maritime security, calling for a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific region. Yoon has also expressed hope to further South Korea's ties with the ASEAN bloc as a whole, with Vietnam as the gateway. Following his summit, Yoon will hold separate meetings with Vietnam's top politicians, including the General Secretary of the ruling Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, and National Assembly Chair Vong Dinh Huê, before attending a state dinner. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Hanoi.
On his first day in Vietnam, President Yoon put on his salesperson hat to promote Korean industries to Vietnam. And to Korean businesses accompanying him on the trip, the president vowed full support in clinching opportunities in the country. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol touted Vietnam's economic potential and showed his support for Vietnamese businesses looking to enter the South Korean market. The president also underscored the importance of the next generation while at the Korea-Vietnam Partnership Fair held at a convention center in Hanoi on Thursday.
베트남은 젊고 역동적인 인구 구조를 가지고 있고 또 고도로 숙련되고 훌륭한 교육을 받은 재능 있는 청년들이 아주 많습니다. 베트남의 혁신 생태계 성장을 이끌고 있는 여러분이 바로 주인공입니다.
This event was arranged by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy and included a K-Industry Showcase section showcasing products from major Korean companies, a Young Tech Startup Grand Challenge section to discover young entrepreneurs in the ASEAN region to start a business in South Korea, as well as an area providing consultation to businesses looking to enter the South Korean market. According to the top office, some 1,700 people attended the event.
창의와 혁신에는 국경이 없습니다. 세계는 이미 하나의 시장이 되어가고 있습니다. 자유와 창의가 존중되고 우수한 인재와 자본이 교류하는 과정에서 혁신과 성장이 이루어집니다.
Also at the K-Food Festival stand where Korean food was on show along with Korean Vietnamese fusion menus, Yoon chatted with Vietnamese youths and tried kimchi banh mi. President Yoon also attended a separate cultural exchange event at the same venue later. There, Vietnamese Vice President Vo Thi An Tran joined as well as K-pop groups Monsta X and AB6. AB6 performed its song Loser with a Vietnamese K-pop dance crew. Vietnamese pop singer Min also drew a crowd by singing Korean singer IU's My Old Story in Korean. In the meantime, President Yoon hosted a dinner for his 205-strong traveling business delegation to promote South Korea-Vietnam exchanges further. With Samsung Electronics chairman Lee Jae-yong and other big names attending the event, he called on businesses to look for opportunities in Vietnam.
글로벌 경기 둔화와 공급망의 교란, 에너지, 기후 위기 등으로 기업 환경이 많이 어렵습니다. 저는 이러한 위기의 극복을 글로벌 공급망 재편의 중심지이자 떠오르는 소비 시장인 이곳 베트남에서 찾을 수 있다고 생각합니다.
Saying a new opportunity is opening up for South Korea as it has a tight link to Vietnam compared to other nations, Yoon called on businesses to take the lead and vowed to provide support. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The U.S. and China are seeing escalating tensions over U.S. President Joe Biden's dictator comments on Chinese President Xi Jinping. Biden downplayed the impact of his remarks on their relations, while Beijing launched strong complaints with a warning. Shin Se-byuk has the latest.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday downplayed the impact of his recent comments comparing Chinese President Xi Jinping to a dictator. He said at a news conference that calling Xi a dictator did not undermine Washington's relationship with Beijing.
I expect to be meeting with President Xi sometime in the future, in the near term, and I don't think it's had any real consequence.
He also suggested that he would not tone down his rhetoric on China in the future. Biden's comments on Thursday followed Chinese ambassador to the U.S., Xie Fang, warned of consequences if Washington isn't to take any immediate and earnest actions. Earlier in the day, Fang made strong protests to senior White House and State Department officials. The Chinese embassy called Biden's earlier comments a smear, which seriously contradicts basic facts and undermines mutual trust. Speaking at a campaign fundraiser in California on Tuesday, Biden equated Xi to a dictator and claimed that Xi was embarrassed when the Chinese balloon was blown off course without his knowledge. It prompted a fierce backlash from Beijing.
They're an open political provocation China is strongly dissatisfied with and firmly opposed to this.
Biden's dictator remark also came only days after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made his visit to China, where he said the two countries had made progress towards getting their relations back on track. However, now given the Chinese embassy is describing the nature and impact of Biden's comment as very negative, this could add more tension to Washington-Beijing relations and could undermine the progress made during Blinken's trip. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
North Korea will most likely continue to use its nuclear weapons as a threat rather than for an actual attack. That's according to a report by the U.S. Office of Director of National Intelligence on Thursday. In the report entitled Scenarios for Leveraging Nuclear Weapons Through 2030, the ODNI says the North's leader Kim Jong-un will most likely employ coercive measures, including nuclear threats, to achieve political objectives and to deter strong Seoul-Washington responses. However, the report also said it is unlikely Pyongyang would execute an offensive strategy using nuclear weapons in a bid to seize power over the Korean peninsula. It says such a use of force will be more likely if Kim could outmatch South Korea's military capabilities, deter U.S. intervention, and maintain support from China. Now, after 4 days of searching, debris from missing Titan submersible have been found. All 5 passengers are presumed to be dead in an implosion. Yoon has the latest.
A deep-sea submersible operated by the U.S.-based company Ocean Gate Expeditions launched around 6 a.m. Sunday, and when it failed to return on schedule, was reported overdue later Sunday afternoon. The sub carrying 5 people was on its way to where the famous Titanic sank more than a century ago. A search and rescue operation had pinned hopes on the vessel's 96-hour supply of oxygen. On Thursday, however, the U.S. Coast Guard said it had uncovered a debris field within the search area of the missing sub, wiping away the silver of hope that remained for finding the 5 men. Rear Admiral John Mauger of the 1st Coast Guard District said during a news conference that the debris field was consistent with the catastrophic implosion of the vehicle and that the families of those on board had been notified.
In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. Upon this determination, we immediately notified the families.
Rear Admiral Mauger also told reporters that a robotic diving device deployed from a Canadian ship discovered the debris field on the seabed some 488 meters from the bow of the Titanic, 4 kilometers beneath the surface, in a remote corner of the North Atlantic. The 5 passengers aboard the Titan were the company's founder and chief executive officer, Stockton Rush, who was piloting the sub, along with British billionaire and explorer Hamish Harding, Pakistani-born businessman Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman, and French oceanographer and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. The 5-day multinational search for the vessel has come to an end, but the U.S. Coast Guard said it will continue searching near the Titanic for more clues about what happened to the Titan, and efforts will also continue to recover the sub and the remains of the 5 men who died. Yoon, Arirang News.
Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos praised South Korea for proving the company's unwavering belief that great stories can come from anywhere and captivate audiences worldwide. Speaking at a media event in Seoul on Thursday, he said Netflix has invested in original, authentic, local stories in over 50 countries since its global launch in 2016, adding that 60% of Netflix subscribers have watched at least one Korean title. He also said the global viewership of Korean content went up 6-fold in the last 4 years, citing the strength of its storytelling power. Meanwhile, Netflix announced its policy of charging additional fees for accounts shared outside families will be implemented in South Korea soon. Heavy monsoon rain is expected to hit South Korea, starting with southern regions on Sunday before spreading to the rest of the nation on Monday. Weather forecasts are predicting heavy, localized torrential rainfall for several parts of the country from Sunday to Tuesday. The monsoon front will then reportedly head down south mid-next week before moving back up north again to pour heavy rain nationwide by the end of that week. In preparation for what's to come, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Friday stopped by the Korea Meteorological Administration in Seoul to check up on safety measures including emergency text messages warning the public of heavy rainfall. He also inspected the conditions of flood-prone homes near the Dorimcheon stream and requested officials to take special care in making sure people there are safe, especially those living in semi-basement apartments known as 반지하. South Korea is also bracing for even hotter temperatures this summer. Many are already concerned about the bills amid soaring high electricity prices. Our Lee Soo-jin went out to find out various ways to save money.
This summer is expected to be the hottest yet. With spiking temperatures and rate hikes, electricity bills are expected to reach record highs. There are, however, efforts being made by communities, individual households, and the private sector to cut down on energy usage and save money. Let's go find out how this apartment complex is doing exactly that. We met with Kim Dong-chul, who's the head manager of this apartment complex that was selected as a smart energy project by the provincial office. He told us that the 22 elevators in the complex use regenerative drives.
이 회생 제동 장치라고 했고, 네, 기계실에 올라올 때는 전기에서 올라오는데 내려갈 때 그냥 내려가는 거를 내려가면서도 전기를 발전시켜 갖고 하는 거 이런 장치예요. 공동전기로 차감이 되죠.
These regenerative drives have saved the apartment complex more than $13,000 as of last month since their installation in 2019. The solar panels installed on the complex's roofs have also helped save an additional $5,000.
10개 동 중에서 여기 나무죠. 10개 동 중에서 남향으로 돼 있는 박공지붕에 5개 동에 설치가 돼 있는 거죠.
We are able to save 2 to 3 times more energy compared to other apartment complexes.
But this apartment complex isn't just saving energy costs on a community level.
Residents can download an app on their phones and check in real time how much electricity they are using.
A resident of the complex said he's optimistic about his chances of successfully managing his electricity bills.
I can see how I used around 150 kilowatt hours today, and so I just have to make sure I don't exceed the 300 kilowatt hour threshold.
Another way that individual households can lower their electricity bills this summer is through the energy cashback plan that you can get by registering at KEPCO's cashback website. Online registrations for the cashback exceeded the 200,000 mark just 11 days after its launch. The government's new energy cashback, starting in July, is being offered on top of the existing basic cashback plan. If you use around 427 kilowatt hour this summer, last year's average monthly energy usage in a 4-person household during summer, your electricity bill will come to around $62 compared to last year's $50 due to the rate hikes. But if you save just 10%, you're eligible to receive cash back totaling $3. With the $9 you've already saved just from using 10% less than last year, you'll actually end up saving nearly $12 in total this summer. If you save 30%, you'll be saving nearly $40. Energy vouchers have also been expanded this year for those who are classified as economically vulnerable. People can apply for the vouchers at any of the administrative welfare centers across the nation. We visited one of the centers ourselves to find out more.
Last year, the program was limited to recipients of medical and livelihood benefits, but this year it has been expanded to include recipients of housing and education benefits. The day we first began accepting applications, there was a huge influx.
Increasing interest in how to cut energy costs has also reached the private sector, namely department stores. The head of a solar panel installation team for Lotte department store told us that the store has plans to install solar panels at 4 more of its branches by the end of the year.
The Noan branch alone produces energy amounting to around 60 4-person households.
That's around 240,000 kilowatt-hour per year. While all the efforts being made already at various levels shows that concerns about energy costs are at an all-time high, it also raises hopes that people will be able to successfully manage their electricity bills during the upcoming peak summer months. 이수진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the UK, the Bank of England on Thursday announced a surprise rate hike of 50 basis points, bringing the country's interest rate to 5%. The BOE said it made the decision as data suggested that UK inflation could take more time to cool down. According to figures released Wednesday, the UK's inflation rate is at 8.7%. The rate hike is the largest since February and means that the UK is seeing its highest borrowing costs level since April 2008. The news came as a shock to some economists who had predicted a 25 basis point increase. Turkey, meanwhile, also saw its main interest rate hiked from 8.5% to 15%. The hike is lower than what was expected, but still marks a policy reversal from President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who had insisted on keeping interest rates low. Inflation in Turkey is currently running at nearly 40%. We turn over to Brazil. A trial is underway that could temporarily prevent former President Jair Bolsonaro from running for office again. The trial started on Thursday at the Supreme Electoral Court in the capital, Brasilia. Bolsonaro did not show up in person. He faces charges of abuse of political power and misuse of public media. The charges were made over a July 2022 meeting between Bolsonaro and foreign diplomats while he was still president. There, he reportedly claimed that Brazil's electronic voting machines were prone to being hacked and vulnerable to fraud. Although not a criminal case, if found guilty, he could be barred from running for public office for up to 8 years. Shifting our attention to Beijing, the Chinese capital on Thursday saw its hottest day ever recorded for the month of June. Local media reported that one of Beijing's main weather stations recorded a temperature of 41.1 degrees Celsius. Another smaller station in the northeast reached an even higher temperature of 41.8 degrees. The figures beat the previous high of 40.6 degrees recorded on June 10, 1961. And it came close to the hottest temperature ever recorded in the city, which was 41.9 degrees on July 24, 1999. Beijing has since issued an orange alert, the second most severe weather warning on its 4-tier system. Authorities say that temperatures could remain as high as 39 degrees until Saturday. And finally, Hong Kong welcomed the return of its annual Dragon Boat Festival. Taking place on Thursday at Aberdeen, the festival was held as normal for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. 45 teams took part, racing distances of 250 and 500 meters. Depending on the boat, teams taking part in the festival ranged from 8 to 50 people. Teams are usually composed of a drummer, a helmsman, and paddlers. Typically, a standard dragon boat in Hong Kong has enough space for 20 people. The festival is part of a broader celebration of the ancient Chinese boat sport, which dates back more than 2,000 years. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Well, it's hotter today. Seoul sees highs going up about 5 degrees higher than yesterday, with Gwangju also going up to 5 degrees higher than season norms, and it will remain quite hot through the weekend. We started off the day under cloudy skies, but it will get sunnier as the day goes on, with stronger UV rays in the western parts of the country and Jeju. And south of Jeju is likely to have extreme levels of UV rays today. Meanwhile, Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukdo provinces will see passing rain with with scattered thunderstorms during the day today. Afternoon highs are 2 to 7 degrees higher than yesterday in most parts of the country, and the air quality will be decent nationwide all day today. Now, this year's monsoon season is set to begin this weekend, starting from Jeju and the south coast on Sunday. Then the monsoonal front will drop showers nationwide next Monday. Well, monsoon rain that's forecast to drop heavily on Jeju looks to continue into next Wednesday before a short break. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.